it's a strategy that is considered delta neutral, which means basically if you take kind of both sides of the trade and you're making a spread, like a fee on that, you make money whether it goes up or down. So in theory, there shouldn't be that much risk associated with it. So Alameda kind of blew up because they would offer these people, people who are giving out loans, they'd say, hey, we'll give you this really attractive rate of return. And we're doing strategies that seemingly are low risk. So we're a low risk bet. We're these smart kids from Jane Street, and you can kind of trust us to be this smarter than everyone else kind of thing. Around 2019, Sam started FTX, which is an exchange. Specifically, it specialized in derivatives, so like margins, kind of more sophisticated crypto products. And it got in with Binance early on. So Binance actually has a prior relationship to FTX, which we'll explore in a second because they're going to play a role in FTX's collapse, actually. Binance is the number one crypto exchange, and they're led by, he's called CZ on Twitter. I don't want to butcher his full name, but really smart guy, has played his hand really well and built up a quite large exchange. And Binance was funding a bunch of different like startups. So they helped invest into FTX early on. They invested 100 million. So these guys were kind of like teammates early on, SBF and CZ. And FTX quickly grew. They got like, especially in 2020, 2021, they got a lot of endorsements. They got a lot of credibility in the space. And eventually FTX actually bought out Binance. They gave them $2 billion. So pretty good investment for CZ in a couple of years. And now lead that up to 2022. What happens? Luna collapse, Three Arrows Capital collapse, which if you don't know, there's just these kind of cataclysmic events in crypto, led by some pretty risky behavior, whether Luna was a token that promised really attractive returns that were unsustainable ultimately, and it just kind of spiraled. It did what's called a stablecoin death spiral, which we can talk about if we need to.
Stablecoin death spiral. I can't wait till that like actually enters the lexicon, like a Wikipedia page on it. Like economic students are learning it in school.
Yes.
That's like a chapter in a book. Anyway, I mean, this is the reality of our world. This is a really big part of the economic system is cryptocurrency, and stablecoin is part of that.
Yeah, it's weird because on the one hand, cryptocurrency is supposed to somewhat simplify or add transparency to the financial markets. The idea is for the first time, you don't have to wait for an SEC filing from some corporate business. You can look at what they're doing on chain, right? So that's good because a lot of big financial problems are caused by lack of transparency
Mhm.
and lack of understanding risk. But ironically, you get some people creating these arbitrarily complicated financial products like algorithmic stablecoins, which then introduce more risk and blow everything up. So, anyways, Three Arrows Capital blew up. And all of a sudden, this crypto industry, which everyone thought was going to the moon, Bitcoin to 100,000, is in some trouble. And FTX seems like the only people who, besides like Binance, who's also really big and stable, and Coinbase, they seemed like they were doing fine. In fact, they were bailing out companies in the summer. I don't know if you remember that SBF was likened to like Jamie Dimon, who's the CEO of Chase, who like kind of was like the buck stops here. I'm like the backstop, right? So SBF was supporting the industry. He was like the stable guy. So come to like around October and November, there's all this talk about regulation. Everything's been blowing up. SBF's leading the charge on regulation. And CZ, the CEO of Binance, gets word that maybe SBF is kind of like cutting him out or making regulation that would maybe impact his business. And he doesn't like that too much. They start kind of feuding a little bit on Twitter. So when it comes out, a CoinDesk report came out that FTX's balance sheet wasn't looking that good. Like it looked pretty weak. They had a lot of coins that in theory had value if you looked at their market price, but for a variety of reasons, if you tried to sell them, they'd collapse in value. So it's sort of like this thing, a house built on sand. And a friend of mine on Twitter, he goes by Dirty Bubble Media. He released a report, and he basically said, "I think these guys are insolvent." Well, CZ saw that, and he retweeted it and started adding fuel to the fire of like the speculation. Because up to this point, everyone thought FTX is super safe, super secure. There's no reason to not keep your money there. Tom Brady keeps his money there, whatever. And CZ kind of adds fuel to the fire by saying, not only am I retweeting this, adding kind of like validity to this speculation? But also, I'm going to take the FTT that I got, which part of their balance sheet was this FTT token, which is FTX's like proprietary token. And Alameda and FTX controlled a lot of it. They were using this token to basically be a large amount of collateral for their whole balance sheet. So it accounted for this huge amount of their value. And the CEO of Binance had a huge chunk of it as well. And he said, I'm going to sell all of it. And the fuel that introduced to the market is if he sells all this FTT, and this FTT is underwriting a lot of the value of FTX.
Does FTTs almost approximate like similar things if you were to buy a stock in a public company? Is that kind of like a stock in FTX?
It sort of was this proxy because what FTX was committed to doing was sort of like buying back FTT tokens. They would do
Right.
this thing called the buy and burn. I think there was some amount of sharing in the revenue fees of FTX. It was kind of this convoluted thing. In my opinion, the exact value of FTT was speculated from the beginning.
Mhm.
And it was clear that it was very tied to the performance of FTX, which is important because we'll get to later. FTX sort of built their whole scaffold on FTT, which meant that this scaffold was very wobbly because if FTX loses a little bit of confidence, then your value goes down. When your value goes down, you lose more confidence and this goes down. So it was kind of like this thing that this flywheel that when it was going well, you got huge amounts of growth. When it's going bad, you get a exchange death spiral, sort so to speak.
Actually, this structure, it's a pretty non-standard structure. Did the architects of its initial design anticipate the wobbliness of the whole system? So, putting fraud and all those things that happen later aside, do you think it was difficult to anticipate this kind of FTT, FTX, Alameda Research weird dynamic?
No, because I think sophisticated traders always think in terms of diversification and correlation. So if you're trying to, the way to think about risk in investing is like if I invest in you, Lex Friedman, and then I also invest in some product you produce, the performance of those two things will be pretty correlated.
Yes.
So whether I invest in you or I invest in this product that you like are completely behind, I'm not de-risking. I'm basically counting all on you doing well, right?
Mhm.
And if you do bad, my investments do very bad. So if I'm trying to build a stable thing, I shouldn't put all my eggs in the Lex Friedman basket unless I'm positive that you're going to do well, right? And these people,
As your financial advisor, I would definitely
yeah,
recommend you do not put all your eggs in this basket.
right. And so you can think about it like if I know that these people were trained to think like this.
Yeah.
And so the idea that you could start this exchange, you're worth billions of dollars, and you underwrite your whole system by betting, putting most of it on your own token is insane. And what's crazy is we'll later find out that they were basically taking customer assets, which were real things like Bitcoin and Ethereum with risks that were not so correlated to FTX, and they were swapping them out. They were using to go basically gamble those and putting FTT in its place as quote value. So they were increasing the risk of the system in order to bet big, with the idea that if they bet big and won, we'd all be singing their praises. If they bet big and lost, I don't know if they had a plan, but I think they were being extremely risky, and there's no way to avoid their knowledge of that.
So when you say customer assets, is I come to this crypto exchange, I have Bitcoin or some other cryptocurrency, and this is a thing that has pretty stable value over time. I mean,
Yeah,
as
relatively.
crypto, relatively
Relatively to
so,
crypto.
and I'm going to store it on this crypto exchange, and that's the whole point. This is so this thing, to the degree that crypto holds value, is supposed to continue holding value. There's not there's not supposed to be an extra risk inserted into the thing.
Right, and FTX was pretty clear from the beginning that they wouldn't invest your assets in anything else. They wouldn't do anything else with it. They wouldn't trade it. That's what made FTX such like a horror story for investor confidence is basically they made every signal that they would not do anything nefarious with your tokens. They would just put them to the side, put them in a separate account that they don't have access to, and they just kind of wait there until the day that you're ready to withdraw them.
Mhm.
That's explicitly what they told their customers. So going back to the story a little bit, CZ then says, "Hey, I'm selling this token that underwrites the value of FTX." There's a total panic. SBF during this time says several lies, such as FTX assets are fine. We have enough money to cover all withdrawals. And a day later, he basically admits that that wasn't the case. They don't have the money. They're shutting down. And then a few days later after that, they declared bankruptcy. I should be clear, there's Alameda Research, FTX International, and FTX US, which is the US side of things.
Mhm.
These are three different entities. All of them are in bankruptcy, and it's not clear to the extent that they were commingling funds, but it's clear that they were commingling funds to some extent. So they kind of were taking from each other, and that is where the fraud happens, right? Because if going back to our earlier analogy, if you're supposed to set funds aside and I find out you were using it to go make all these arbitrage trades or do market making or all these activities you were known for your like hedge fund trading firm thing, that's a huge problem because he basically lied about this.
Mhm.
And especially when he's saying explicitly that we have these things, we have these funds, and these things turn out to be lies. Well, again, the question of fraud comes in, and it's just like, there's no way he didn't know. So the obvious question might be, well, why isn't he locked up? Why is he running around? And it's because really his story is that he didn't know any of it. He found out that they had to steelman his position. He would say he was totally disconnected from what Alameda was doing. He had no idea that they had such a large margin position, that they had an accounting quirk, and that accounting quirk hit $8 billion from his view. And so when he was saying that they had money to cover it, he was saying that truthfully to the best of his ability. And he just was so distracted at the time that he made a series of increasingly embarrassing mistakes. And now he owes it to the people to right those wrongs by publicly making this huge apology tour. So you might have seen him on, I mean, he's been talking to nearly everyone um, about basically how he's just didn't know what he's doing. He's the stupidest man alive. That's
So what
basically it.
what 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 are some interesting things you've learned from those interviews?
I think I've appreciated why you don't talk in that position. Most people wouldn't talk. Most people would listen to their legal counsel and not talk. I do not think he's any lawyer worth their salt would tell him to talk because right now, I think the danger of what he's doing is he's locking himself into a story of how things happened. And I don't think that story is going to hold up in the coming months because I think it's impossible from the insider conversations I've had with Alameda Research employees, with FTX employees. It's impossible to square what they are telling me with no like incentive to lie with what SBF is telling me with every incentive to lie, which is fundamentally that he didn't know they were commingling funds. He didn't know they were gambling with customer money. And it was basically this huge mistake. And it's Alameda's fault, but he wasn't involved in Alameda, a company he owned.
So, like a compassionate but hard-hitting gangster that you are, very recently, you interacted with SBF on. I like how you adjust the suspenders as you're saying this. You interacted on Twitter Spaces with SBF and really put his feet to the fire with some hard-hitting questions. What did you ask, and what did you learn from that interaction?
Sure, I should say first, this was not a willing interaction. I mean, I thought that was kind of the funny part of it because I've been asking him for an interview for a while. He's been giving interviews to nearly everyone who wants one, big channels, small channels. He didn't give me one, but I managed to get some by sneaking up on some Twitter spaces and DMing the people and like being like, "Hey, can I come up?" So I didn't get him to ask everything that I wanted because he like would leave sometimes, after I asked some of the questions. But really, what I asked was about this 8 billion and zooming in on the improbability of his lack of knowledge. It's sort of like if you run a company and you know the insides and outs, and you're the top of your field, top in class, and all of a sudden it all goes bust and you say, "I had no idea how any of this worked.
Yeah.
I didn't know." It's like the guy who runs Whataburger saying, "I didn't know where we sourced our beef." I didn't know where we that's a Texas example, actually.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Let's take it, like, worldwide. Walmart, like, I didn't know we used Chinese manufacturers. It's like, that's impossible. To become Walmart, you have to know how your supply chain works. You have to know, even if you're at a high level, you know how this stuff works.
Can I do a hard turn on that and go
Sure.
as one must to Hitler? Hitler's writing is not on any of the documents around, as far as I know, on the final solution. So, in some crazy world, he could theoretically say, I didn't know anything about the death camps." So there's this plausible deniability in theory. So that most people would look at that and say, it's very unlikely. You don't
Well,
know.
especially if all the insiders are coming out and saying, "No, no, no, of course he knew. He was directing us from the top." I mean, what's interesting about the structure, and, like, I love the
Sorry,
nitty-gritty.
we're back to SBF. We
Yeah.
went to Hitler.
Sorry,
Now we're
sorry.
back to
I
the
wanted to turn
SBF.
us as fast as possible away from Hitler. I yeah.
I
I
apologize. So the insiders in what? Alameda Research.
Alameda Research.
Alameda
What
Research.
was interesting is that there was this sort of one-way window going on between Alameda and FTX, where FTX employees didn't know a lot of what was going on. Alameda insiders, and I would say by design, knew almost everything that was going on at FTX. Um, and so I think that was really interesting from the perspective of a lot of the so-called like what he's trying to ascribe to as like failures or mistakes or ignorance and negligence, when looked at closely, are much more designed, and they sort of don't arise spontaneously.
Mhm,
Because, like, let's say, so there's this thing in banking and like trading where if I run a bank and you run like a trading firm, we need to have informational walls between us because there's huge conflicts of interest that can arise, right? So the negligent argument might be that, like, oh, we just didn't know. We're sort of these dumb kids in the Bahamas. So we shared information equally. But when you see a one-way wall, that starts to look a lot different, right? If I have a back-end source of looking at, or sorry, you're the trading firm. So
mhm,
you have a back-end way to look at all my accounts, and I have no idea that you're doing that. That all of a sudden looks like a much more designed thing. When it would be plausible, let's say, going to use another analogy too. If you're saying, look, I commingled funds because I was so bad at corporate structures,
mhm,
you would expect those companies to have a very simple corporate structure because you didn't know what you're doing, right? But what we see with FTX and Alameda is they had something like 50 companies and subsidiaries and this impossibly complicated web of corporate activity. You don't get there by accident. You don't wake up and go, "Oh, I designed like this watch that ticked a very specific way, but it was all accidental." If you really didn't know what you were doing, you'd end up with a simple structure. So, even just like from a fundamental perspective, what SBF was doing and like the activities they were engaging in were so complicated and purposely designed to obfuscate what they were doing. It's impossible to subscribe to the negligence argument. And I wanna quickly say too, like, I don't think a lot of people have honed in on this. There was insider trading going on from Alameda's perspective, where they would know what coins FTX was going to list on their exchange. And there's a famous effect where, let's say you're this legitimate exchange, you list a coin, the price spikes.
mhm,
Insiders told me it was a regular practice for Alameda insiders to know that FTX was going to list a coin and as a company buy up that coin so they could sell it after it listed. And they
yeah,
made millions of dollars. How do you do that accidentally?
yeah, and that's illegal. Uh,
Totally
right.
illegal. So that's illegal from like, and if an individual does it, it's illegal, it's fraud. What if a company is systematically doing it? And you can't tell me that FTX or someone at FTX wasn't feeding that information about to Alameda or somehow giving them keys to know that. And that would happen at the highest level. It would happen at SPS level. And this is why his arguments of I was dumb, I was naive, I was sort of ignorant are so preposterous because he's dumb and ignorant the second it becomes criminal to be smart and sophisticated,
Mhm.
right?
But then also coming out and talking about it, which is
It's a bizarre move.
it's a bizarre and almost a dark move. Can you tell the story of the 8 billion? You mentioned 8 billion. What's the 8 billion? What's the missing 8 billion?
Yeah. So It's really interesting because it's sort of like wire fraud. He's sort of copping to like smaller crimes to avoid the big crime. The big crime is you knew everything and you were behind it, right? The smaller crimes are like a little wire fraud here, little wire fraud there. So what the 8 billion is that FTX didn't always have banking. It's hard to get banking as a crypto exchange. There's all these questions of like where's the money coming from? Is it coming from money launderers? So for a variety of reasons, it's always been hard for exchanges to get bank accounts. So before, when FTX was just getting started, they didn't have a bank account. So how do you put money on FTX? Well, they would have you wire your money to their trading firm. Their wiring instructions would go to their trading firm. It's easier to get banking as a trading firm. So you'd put your money with the trading firm and then they'd credit you the money on FTX.
Mhm.
Okay, first of all, this is a whole circumvention of all these banking guidelines and regulations. That's the first like thing that I think is illegal. But basically what SBF argued is that there was an accounting glitch, error, problem where when you'd send money to Alameda, even though they'd credit you on FTX, they wouldn't safeguard your deposits. Like your deposits would go into what he called a stub account, which is just like some account that's not very well labeled, kind of like a placeholder account. And he didn't realize that those were Alameda's funds or they were playing with those funds and that they basically should have safeguarded that for customers. That's his explanation. It's preposterous because it's $8 billion. But, anyways, um,
Just poor labeling of accounts.
of an $8 billion account. I mean, it's
What's a
like
billion between
a
five?
billion. This
I,
is
I
like
do
what
this all the time in
this is the
programming.
craziest thing. Like he was talking to me, and at one point in the conversation, he's like, "Yeah, I didn't have precise not because he said I didn't have knowledge of Alameda's accounts." And I said, "Well, Forbes a month ago was getting detailed accounting of Alameda." And he goes, "Oh, that wasn't detailed accounting. I just knew I was right within 10 billion or so." What is that error margin? $10 billion for a company that is arguably never worth more than 100 million.
Yeah.
Probably never even worth more than 50 billion. Your error margin is $10 billion. You have to be this is a guy who is sending around statements that like there was no risk involved. And you're telling me he had a error margin of $10 billion? That is the difference between like a healthy company and a company so deep underwater you're going to jail. So it, you have to believe that he is impossibly stupid and square that with the sophistication that he brought to the table. I think it's an impossible argument. I don't even think
Okay.
it's
Do you think he is incompetent, insane, or evil? If you were to bet money on each of those.
incompetent, insane, or evil.
Insane meaning he's lying to everyone, but also to himself, uh, which you could which is a little bit different than incompetence.
He's not incompetent. So I think he's some combination of insane and evil, but it's impossible to know unless we know deep inside his heart how self like deluded he is versus a calculated strategy. And I think if you look at SBF, I think he's a fascinating individual. Just, I mean, he's a horrible human being. Let's start there. But he's also somewhat interesting from a psychology perspective because he's very open about the fact that he understands image and he understands how to cultivate image, the importance of image so well that I think a lot of people, even though they've talked about it, aren't emphasizing that enough when interacting with him. This is a man whose entire history is about cultivating the right opinions at the right time to achieve the right effect. Why do you think he would suddenly change that approach when he has all the more reason to cultivate an image?
So he is extremely good naturally or
I
uh
don't know if he's good, but he's hyper aware
so he's deliberate in cultivating a public image and controlling that
for
public
sure.
image.
You know about the like Democrat donations. Like he knew to donate to the right people, $40 million. He says on a call that we released with Tiffany Fong, he says on a call that he donated the same amount to Republicans. There's speculation on whether this is true because he's a liar, whatever. So caveat there. But he said he donated to Republicans the same amount, but he donated dark because he knew that most journalists are liberal and they would kind of hold that against him. So he wanted all the sides to be on in his favor, in his pocket, while simultaneously understanding the entire media landscape and playing them like a fiddle by cultivating this image of I'm this progressive, woke billionaire who wants to give it all away, do everything for charity. I drive a Corolla while living in $1 million penthouse, multi-million. Um, but that was sort of the angle. He understood so well how to play the media, and I think he underestimated when he did this how much people would put him under a deeper microscope, and I don't think he has achieved the same level of success in cultivating this new image because I think people are so skeptical now, no one's buying it. But I think he's trying it. He's doing it to the best
But
of his
it has
ability.
worked leading up to this particular wobbly situation. So before that, wasn't there a public perception of him being uh, a force for good, a financial force for good?
100%. Yeah. Somebody from Sequoia Capital, wrote this glowing review that he was going to be the world's first trillionaire. There's so many pieces done on he's the most generous billionaire in the world that he was sort of like the steel man of, it's possible to make tons of money. This is like the effective altruism movement. Make as much money as you can, as fast as you can, and then give it all away. And he was sort of like the poster child for that. And he did give some of it away and got a lot of press for it. And I think that was kind of by design. I want to address a real quick point.
Yes.
A lot of people have said that like Binance played a role. And while they catalyzed this, insolvency is a problem that will eventually manifest either way. So I don't put any blame on CZ for basically causing this meltdown. The underlying foundation was unstable and it was going to fall apart at the next push. I mean, he just happened to be the final kind of like uh I don't know, the straw that broke the camel's back,
Yeah, the
if you will.
catalyst that revealed the
But
fraud.
yeah,
Yeah.
but it's like I don't think he's culpable for FTX's like malfeasance in how they handled accounts, if that makes sense.
So what role did they play? Could they have helped alleviate some of the pain of uh, investors, of people that held funds there?
Yeah, I mean, probably. I don't know. I would see some kind of weird obligation, like with the 2 billion they made on FTX. Remember, they got 2 billion, some of it in cash, some of it in FTT tokens. So I don't know how much actual cash they have from that deal, but they have billions from the success of what seems to be a fraud. It seems to have been a fraud from early on. They had the back door as early as early 2020, from what I can tell.
So the backdoor between FTX and
Alameda,
Alameda
yes,
Research.
yes.
Do you think CZ saw through who SPF is?
N-
He's doing?
no, I think I think CZ is like he's a shark. I think he's good at building a big business. Um,
Like a good
I don't
shark or a bad shark? I don't know.
I don't know. I think sharks just eat. I mean, I don't know. I think
My relationship with shark has like Finding Nemo. There's a shark in that. So I
sure.
don't know. So
I think like Jeff Bezos is a shark.
okay.
So whether people have loaded connotations of like how they feel about Jeff Bezos. I mean, I would say like I think CZ is a ruthless businessman.
Mhm.
I think he's cold. He's calculated. He's very deliberate and I think what he should do in this position is forfeit the funds that he profited from that investment because largely I think it's owed to the customers. There's so much hurting out there. So I think they could do a lot of good around that. I don't know if they will because I don't know if he sees it in his best interest. I think that's probably how he's thinking. But yeah, I think they could have helped or could still help there.
Who do you think suffered the most from this so far?
The little account holders, this is always true. So, one of the big temptations with fraud, I've covered a lot of scams, frauds, is everyone looks at the big number. Everyone, that's the headline, billions of dollars, the top 50 creditors, what everyone thinks at first. But quickly, when you dig down, you realize that most people who lost $10 million, I mean, I'm sure that's terrible for them. I wish them to get their money back, but it's usually the people with like 50,000 or less that are most impacted. Usually, they do not have the money to spare. Usually, they're not diversified in a sophisticated way. So I think it's those people. I think it's the small account holders that I feel the worst for, and unfortunately, they often get the least press time or airtime.
That's the really difficult truth of this is that, especially in the culture of cryptocurrency, there's a lot of young people who are not diversified. They're basically all in on a particular crypto. and it just breaks my heart to think that there's somebody with 50,000 or 30,000 or 20,000. But the point is that money is everything they own.
Right.
And now
Now what?
their life is basically destroyed. Like, imagine you're 18, 19, 20, 21 years old. You saved up, you've been working, you saved up, and this is it. This is basically destroying a life.
What's so brutal about this is that this all comes on the back. The entire crypto market comes on the back of comes from the deep distrust of traditional finance, right? Yeah, 2008, everybody lost trust in the banking systems. And they lost trust that if those banking systems acted in a corrupt way, that they would receive the justice. It turned out that the banks received favorable treatment, people didn't. So people lost faith in the structure of our financial system in a way that is we're still feeling the reverberations of it. And so when crypto came along, it was like kind of this way to reinvent the wheel, reinvent the world for the like sort of lowly and the like less powerful and kind of level the playing field. So what's so sad about events like this is you see that fundamentally a lot of the power structures are the same, where the people at the top face little repercussions for what they do. The people at the bottom are still getting screwed. The people at the bottom are still getting lied to. And law enforcement is way behind the ball.
Do you think this really damaged people trust in cryptocurrency?
For sure. Way bigger than Luna, way bigger than Three Arrows Capital. It's because of who SBF was. It's not just the dollar figure behind it. It's because he wooed so many of our media elites who should have been calling him out or at least investigating him and not rubber stamping him. It's an indictment of our financial system, even our most sophisticated people in BlackRock, in Sequoia, who didn't see this coming, who also rubber stamped him. Um, and you just wonder, like, if you can't trust the top people in crypto who are supposedly the good guys, the guys saving crypto, just a month ago or 2 months ago, he was the guy on Capitol Hill that was talking to Gary Gensler, to all the top people in Washington. He was orchestrating the regulation of crypto. If that guy is a complete fraudster, liar, psychopath, and nobody knew it until it was too late, what does that mean about the system itself that we're building?
So you are one of, if not the best, like fraudster investigators in the world. Was this on your radar at all, SBF, in the over the past couple of years? Were any red flags going off for you?
Yes. So funny enough, like one of my videos from 6 months ago or so blew up because I got to give a lot of credit to Matt Levine of Bloomberg, great journalist, great finance journalist. And I want to say when I like talk about media elite, there are people doing great work in these mainstream institutions. It's not a monolith, just like independent media isn't all doing great work and all the corporate media is bad or whatever. There's like these overarching narratives that I don't subscribe to. So Matt Levine's a great journalist. He did an interview with SBF where he got Sam to basically describe a lot of what was going on in DeFi, but it kind of a larger philosophy around crypto. And he described a Ponzi scheme where he just described this black box. It does nothing. But if we ascribe it value, then we can create more value and more value and more value. And it kind of was this ridiculous description of a Ponzi scheme, but there was no moral judgment on it. It was like, oh, yeah, this is great. We can make a lot of money from this.
Mhm,
And Matt is like, well, it sounds like you're in the Ponzi business and business is good.
mhm.
Made a video about that. I said, this is ridiculous. This is absurd, whatever. It's obscene. But um, I didn't explicitly call SBF a fraud there. And I think if I'm being, I think I saw some of it, but like many people, I think a lot of us were kind of like, I think a lot of us missed how wrong everyone could be at the same time. I did notice leading up to the crash what was happening, and I called it out a day or a day and a half before it happened because I saw my friends post Dirty Bubble Media, and this was the first real look into the heart of their finances because they're this black box. So you just kind of had to evaluate them without knowing much. And once we got a peek under the hood of what their finances were, I realized, oh my gosh, these guys might be completely insolvent. So I made a tweet about it. I hope some people saw it and got their money out. Um, but pretty quickly after that, I caught the narrative of what was really going on at Alameda, that it was basically this Ponzi scheme that they had built.
Do you ever sit like Batman in the dark since you fight crime and wonder, like, sad, just staring into the darkness and thinking I should have caught this earlier
Yeah, I think
in your $10 billion
$10 million
$10
studio.
million dollar
We're
studio
working our way there. Um,
with a bunch of
sure, like
cocaine on the
it's
table.
never enough. It's never enough. Like you always could be catching stuff sooner. You always could be doing more.
I mean, the fascinating thing you said is that one of the lessons here is that a large number of people, influential, smart people, could all be wrong at the same time in terms of their evaluation of SBF.
This is one thing that I don't understand too is like I think it's one thing to not see something. I think it's another thing to like rubber stamp or explicitly endorse. I feel like a lot of people didn't look too close at SBF because I think a lot of the warning signs were there. But my feeling is if you're a Sequoia, if you're a BlackRock, wouldn't you do that due diligence? I mean, like,
Yeah.
like before just endorsing something, especially in the crypto space. This is just why I don't do any deals in the crypto space ever, because it's impossible to know which ones are going to be the like big hits or the big frauds or whatever. Um, but if you're going to make that bet, if you're going to make that play, you would think that you would do all the research in the world and you would get sophisticated looks at their liabilities, at how they were structured, all that stuff. And that is the most shocking part is not that, people missed it because you can miss fraud, but that there was so many glowing endorsements like this guy is not going to be that thing. We explicitly endorse him. I saw a Fortune magazine. He was called the next Warren Buffett. It's just crazy.
Do you think it's possible to have enough like Tom Brady endorsements that you don't really investigate? So like
Yes.
that there's a kind of momentum, like
Yes.
societal, social
Yes,
momentum.
I think that's the problem. I actually think that's hugely like a blind spot of our society is we have all these heuristics that can be points of failure where like a rule of thumb is if you go to an Ivy League, well, you must be smart,
Mhm.
right? A rule of thumb is if you're both your parents are Harvard lawyers, you must know the law. You must like kind of be sophisticated. The rule of thumb is if you're running a $1 billion exchange, you must be somehow somewhat ethical, right?
Mhm.
And all of these heuristics can lead to giant blind spots where you kind of just go, oh, we'll check. Like, I don't really, it's a lot of energy to look into people. And if enough of those rules of thumb are met, we just kind of check them off and put them through the system. So, yeah, it's been hugely exposing for sort of like our blind
And
spots.
you don't know maybe how to look in. For example, there's a few assumptions. Now, there's a lot of people are very skeptical of institutions, of government, and so on, but for perhaps too much so.
I agree.
But for some part of history, there was too much faith in government.
Yeah.
And so right now, I think there's faith in certain large companies. There's distrust in certain ones and trust in others. Like people seem to distrust Facebook, extremely skeptical of Facebook.
Hmm.
But they trust, I think, Google with their data. I think they trust Apple with their data
Sure.
much, much more so. Like search, people don't seem to be you Google search. Like, huh, I'm gonna
Throw
put.
it in there.
Have you ever looked at your Google search history? Your Google search history has got to be some of the darkest things.
Oh, I don't think I've ever looked at my Google search history.
You
I'm pretty
should.
careful with like browser hygiene and stuff like that because I think it's
Well, Google search history, unless you explicitly delete, is there. I recommend you look at it. It's fascinating. Look because it goes back to the first days of you using Google search history.
fun fact actually about that. No, no, no. I am aware of that.
Yeah.
I just mean for like certain sensitive topics where like I'm investigating some fraud and I go
Yes.
sign into their website, right? Log in.
Mhm.
I won't use like a traditional browser. I'll use a VPN and I'll like put it on like Brave or something like that.
You log in, you create an account as Lex Friedman,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
you start
Exactly, exactly.
investigating. You mentioned effective altruism.
Yes.
SBF has been associated with this effective altruism, which made me look twice at EA
Sure.
and see, like, wait, um,
I
are the what's going on here? Is this was this used by SBF to give himself a good public image, or is there something about effective altruism that makes it easy to misuse by bad people? What do you think?
Yeah, it's interesting. He could have endorsed a wide range of philosophies. And I guess you just have to wonder, are all those would those philosophies also be tainted if um he had gone bad? I guess effective altruism is sort of unique because he used it as part of his brand. It wasn't like he described himself as a consequentialist and like that ended up mattering. It was like he described himself as an effective altruist and he used that part of the brand to lift himself up. I guess that's why it's getting so much scrutiny. I think the merits of it should speak for themselves. I mean, I'm not personally an effective altruist. Um, I personally am motivated by giving in part emotionally. And for some reason that I can't exactly describe, I think that's somewhat important. I don't think you should detach giving from some personal connection. I, I find trouble with that, and like I said, it's for reasons I can't describe because effective altruism is sort of the most logical ivory tower position you could possibly take. It's like strip all humanity away from giving. Let's treat it like a business. And how many people can we serve through the McDonald's line of charity for like the dollar, right? Um, I just personally don't resonate with that, but I don't think the entire movement is like indicted because of it. Typically, most people who care about giving and charity on the whole are nice people and are so I can't speak for the whole movement. I certainly don't think SBF indicts the whole movement, even though I personally don't subscribe to it.
Yeah, it made me pause, reflect, and step back, like about the movement and about anything that has a strong ideology. So, if there's anything in your life that has a strong set of ideas behind it,
Mhm.
be careful.
Yeah, I mean, look, I kind of feel like what it teaches me and what I kind of think about when I think about systems is that no system saves you from the individual. No system saves you from the individual, their intentions, their lust for power or greed. I mean, I think one of the great ideas is the decentralization of power, and like this is why I think democracies are so great is because they decentralize power across a wide range of like interests and groups, and that being an effective way to kind of try as best as you can to spread out the impact of one individual because one bad individual can do a lot of harm, as I mean clearly as seen here. But no, I don't think it has anything to do with ideology because it's not like being an effective altruist made Sam Bankman Fried a fraud. He was a fraud who happened to be an effective
Well,
altruist, if
that's
that
what.
makes sense.
So there is something about, yes, no system protects you from an individual, but some system enable or serve as a better catalyst than others uh, for the worst aspects of human nature. So, for example, communist ideology. I don't know if it's the ideology or its implementation in this in the 20th century. It seemed like such a sexy and powerful and viral
Mhm.
ideology that it somehow allows the evil bad people to like sneak into the very top. And so like that's what I mean about certain ideas sound so nice that allow you like the lower classes, the workers, the people that do all the work, they should have power. They have been screwed over for far too long. They need to take power back. That sounds like a really powerful idea. And then it just seems like with those powerful ideas, evil people sneak in to the top and start to abuse that power.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a lot of probably big brain political takes, but what I can say is that you can never get away from both the system and the individual mattering. For sure, some systems incentivize some behaviors in certain ways. But some people will take that and go, okay, all we need to do is design the perfect system. And then these individuals will act completely rationally or responsibly in accordance to what our incentives say. That's not true. You could also say, all we have to do is focus on the individual. And all we have to do is just create a society which raises very well adjusted people. And then we can throw them into any system with any incentives and they will act like responsibly, ethically, morally. And I also don't think that's true. So incentives are real, but also the individual ultimately plays a large role too. So, yeah, I don't know. I come down sort of in the middle there.
And some of that It's just accidents of history too. Which individuals finds which system, you know.
You become the face of that.
Yeah, with FTX versus Coinbase versus Binance, which individual, which kinds of ideas and story come to power. Because that matters. It's kind of fascinating that history turns on these small little events done by small little individuals. That Hitler's a failed artist, or you have FDR, or you have all these different characters that do good or do evil onto the world, and it's like single individuals, and they have a life story, and it could have turned out completely different. I mean, it's the flap of the butterfly wings. So yeah, you're right. We should be skeptical of attributing too much to the system or the individual. It's all like a beautiful mess.
The Lex Friedman podcast. That's like that was like a Lex line. I've heard quite a few episodes, and that's like such a Lex line. It's a beautiful
All right,
beautifully said.
all right.
Sorry, I'm a fan of the show.
Okay, all right. I love you too. All right. Can you think of possible trajectories how this FTX SBF saga ends? Uh, and which one do you hope for? Do you hope that SBF goes to jail? That's the individual. And in terms of the investors and the customers, what do you hope happens? And what do you think are the possible things that can happen?
So, yeah, I definitely think SPF should go to jail. For nothing else, for a semblance of justice, the facsimile of justice to occur for all the investors. I also think there are people probably several steps down the chain that probably knew, at least Caroline Ellison. You can have questions about sort of their, Dan Friedberg, who I'd love to talk about as well. There were a lot of people in that room who I think knew. I think we do so much of like the one guy is all to blame. Let's throw everything at him when clearly this was a company wide issue. So everyone who knew, I think, should face the same punishment, which I think should be jail for all of those people. Um,
In part to send a signal to anybody that tries this kind of stuff in the future.
yeah,
Like harsh
absolutely. I
punishment.
mean, one of the big things that you saw, like, okay, take a microcosm of all of this action and just look at like the influencer space, right? There's a ton of deals that were done that I've covered ad nauseum about influencer finds out they can make a lot of money selling a crypto coin. The first thing they wonder is, am I going to get caught? If I do this, is there a consequence? And if the answer is no, then it's a pretty easy decision as long as you don't like have any moral scruples about it, which apparently none of them did, or a lot of them didn't, I should say. So as soon as somebody steps in and regulates, that math changes. And all of a sudden there's a self-interest reason to not go do the bad thing. So for example, and I can give a concrete example of this. There was a NFT, the first ever NFT sort of like official indictment, or the DOJ released this press release that they're charging these guys who ran a NFT project that they didn't follow through on their promises. They made all these promises, lied, and then ran away with the money. First ever consequence for anyone in the NFT space. That day that that press release came out, I saw several NFT projects come back to life from the dead. Why? Because all those founders are freaking out and they realized we scammed people. We have to go at least make it look like we're doing the right thing, right? Even just so that's on the optics side, but there's also tons of people who now go, "Oh, the basically law enforcement is on the scene. We can't do the same thing." So there is a very pragmatic reason for this punishment. It's very much just because people work it into their math of should I commit fraud? And the last several years have been very sort of it's been like a little bit of a nihilistic landscape where no one was getting punished.
Mhm.
And so there's this question of you're almost an idiot if you didn't take the deals. So I think it's really important, extremely important for kind of law enforcement to play a role, regulation to play a role to make it harder to commit those crimes. And if you commit those crimes, there's actual real world punishment for it. To your point about like what's going to happen to the investors, I think that was
Mhm.
kind of your question. It's tough because if the money's not there, the money's not there. I mean, there's going to be the guy, they got the best in class guy. It's the guy who ran the dissolving of Enron. So, I mean, I can't imagine someone better equipped to run a complicated corporate fraud like dissolution. But Yeah, it's tough because everyone's gonna get probably, I don't know, 10 cents on the dollar, maybe less.
I wonder if there's a way to do a progressive redistribution of funds. So I'm
Sure.
just really worried about the pain that small investors feel,
I
you
think
know?
yeah, I think, there's a lot of thought around that. I forget if they actually do this. I mean, I know there's a lot of law about, like, you can't treat creditors differently, you have to treat them all the same.
Mhm.
So, I think it'll be some kind of proportional payback. It's certainly not gonna be that the guys at the top get, a significant amount of their money back and the rest get nothing. Unfortunately, I think there's such a small amount of assets that back this whole thing in the end, and that value is actually declining every day because it was inextricably tied to FSBF. It was like the FTT tokens, which now what are those worth? The Serum tokens, that was his project or the project they made. What is that worth? Basically nothing. So, it's a hard situation. And there's a bigger ethical concern, which is FTX US. It's unclear how backed it was, but it was clearly more backed than FTX International. Do you take all that money and throw it into a big pot and give people money back? Or do you give the US people back their amount of money, which is probably going to be significantly more, and leave everyone internationally out in the cold? And to add to that ethical issue, let's say you're a liquidator and you're US based. There's a tremendous question, like legal questions about, how do you ethically do that? It's not clear. There's a tremendous incentive to just favor the US people over everyone else because it's our country, America, whatever. But I don't know if that's necessarily fair. It's really hard. It's like it's impossible.
And I forget where you said this, but one of I mean, it probably permeates a lot of the investigations you do,
Mhm.
which is this idea that it's really sad that the middle class in most situations like this get fucked over. So the IRS go after the middle class, they don't go after the rich. It's basically everyone who doesn't have a lot of leverage in terms of lawyers, money, get fucked over.
Yes. And then they're the ones, like, it's always the rich and powerful who get the favorable treatment. As a microcosm of this funny story. So one of the big criticisms of crypto, and I think rightly so, is the irreversibility of the transaction. So if I accidentally send a transaction somewhere, it's gone, right?
Yeah.
So crypto.com accidentally sent a lady $10 million, and now they want the money back and they're suing her. But the funny thing is if you are on crypto.com and you send, let's say I accidentally send you money and I come knocking on your door, Lex, I didn't mean to send you, like $1,000. I need my money back. Or if I go to crypto.com and I said, hey, I sent that to the wrong person. Can you reverse it? They'll say, screw off. No way. If I go to court, they'll kill me in court because they're going to go, look, this is how the blockchain works. But then they do it. They do the exact same thing. They send this lady $10 million. They're suing her and they're going to win. Now what's in court is not whether they get the money back. It's should she be liable for theft, I believe. So, and that's just another case of the same rules apply differently to different people, whether you have the money to back you or not. It's a very sad thing. And that's why I think people like you need journalists fighting for the little person. We really need it. And it's kind of like this unfortunate thing where that's the most risky thing to do, like legally. You should not be doing that. But I think it's important to do.
It's the ethical thing. It's the right thing to do. What do you think about influencers and celebrities that supported FTX and SBF? Should they be punished?
Yeah, I think they should take a huge reputational hit. I mean, I think they should be embarrassed. I think they should be ashamed of themselves.
But it was really hard to know. Sorry to interrupt. For them to know, like for example, I think about this a lot.
Yeah.
Is like who do I? Because I don't investigate. Like sponsored by Athletic Greens. Okay, it's a nutritional drink. Should I investigate them deeply? I don't know. You just kinda use reputational, like, it seems to work for me. Should I, like,
I think it
investigate
really
them
depends
deeply?
on I think your credibility hit will depend on what domain you're an expert in. If you're
Sure,
sponsored by a robotics company and you're an expert in robotics, if
sure.
that company turns out to be a disaster and a fraud, then you should have looked more deeply. We're talking mostly about, like, I hold Tom Brady a lot less accountable than financial advisors, financial influencers, because that is their world of expertise. And you treat their recommendation differently, proportionally to what you think their expertise is. So, in some ways, I don't actually think Tom Brady, I'm sure he reached a lot of people. I personally didn't feel at all moved by his recommendation because it's just money. But when you hear somebody who should be an expert in that thing endorse a product in that space, you hold that opinion to a higher standard. And when they're completely cataclysmically wrong, it's going to be a different level of accountability. And I think rightfully so. When Jim Cramer was saying Bear Stearns is fine, he made that terrible call with Bear Stearns in 2008. He was rightfully reamed for all of that, even though it could be considered that, like, well, did he have all the information? Maybe not. But he's a financial advisor. He does this for a living. If you go on and you make a big call and you turn out to be wrong and people lose tons of money, you are going to take a hit, and I think rightfully so. But no, I don't think these people should go to jail or anything like that. Like,
No, but it's such a complicated thing. I mean, I just feel it personally myself. I get it, but you still feel the burden of the fact that your opinion has influence. I know it shouldn't. I know Tom Brady's opinion on financial investment should not have influence, but
right,
it does.
right,
That's just the reality of it.
right.
That's a real burden. I didn't know anything about SBF or FTX. It wasn't on my radar at all.
Mhm.
But I could have seen myself like taking them on as a sponsor. I've seen a lot of people I respect, uh, Sam Harris and others, like talk with SBF, like he's doing good for the world. So I could see myself being hoodwinked, having not
Yeah,
done research. And the same thing, it makes me wonder. Like I don't want to become cynical, man. But it makes you wonder who
sure.
are the people in your life you trust that are like that could be the next SBF or worse, big powerful leaders, Hitler and all that kind of stuff. Um, to what degree do you want to investigate? Do you want to hold their feet to the fire, see through their bullshit, call them on their bullshit, and also as a friend, if you happen to be friends or have a connection, how to help them not slip into the land of fraud. I don't know. All of that is just overwhelming.
Yeah,
This is
we should be clear. Like, finance is sort of a special space where you're talking about people's money. You're not talking about whether someone takes a bad supplement or like a supplement that is just they're $50 out, right? I think the scale of harm
yeah.
and therefore responsibility escalates depending on what field you're in. Just like I wouldn't hold Tom Brady as, like, if he gives a bad football opinion, right? And he should have known better. That is a different scale of harm than a doctor giving bad advice, right? Like like he tells you a pill works and the pill kills you or something like that. There's just different levels of accountability depending on the field you're in, and you have to be aware of it. Finance is you have to be extremely conservative if you're going to give financial advice because you're playing with people's lives and you cannot play with them haphazardly. You cannot gamble with them. You cannot play with them on a bet because you're getting paid a lot of money. It's just the nature of the space. And so with the space comes the responsibility and the accountability, and I don't think you can get around that.
Who was Dan Friedberg that you mentioned? Some of these figures in
Yeah.
the SBF realm that are interesting to you.
Super interesting kind of subject because Dan Friedberg is the former general counsel for Ultimate Bet. Ultimate Bet was a poker site where famously they got in a scandal because the owner, Russ Hamilton, was cheating with a little software piece of code they called God Mode. God Mode allowed you to see the guy across from you's hand. Obviously, you can imagine you can win pretty consistently if you know exactly what your opponent has. Very unethical. I should be clear that for some inexplicable reason, I don't think they were ever charged and convicted of a crime, but they were investigated by a gambling commission that found they made tens of millions of dollars this way, for sure. And Dan Friedberg is the general counsel. He's caught on a call, basically conspiring with Russ to hide this fraud. He's saying we should blame it on a consultant, third party. And Russ Hamilton famously says, like, it was me. I did it. I don't want to give the money back. Find basically a way to get rid of this. So that's Dan Friedberg's big achievement. Like, that's what he's known for. He's most known for. And this is the guy they pick as their chief regulatory officer for FTX. Why do you hire somebody who I get it, the not formally charged and convicted, investigated, and there's tape out there. So I want to be clear about what's actually available evidence. But someone whose seemingly only achievement is hiding fraud, why do you hire that guy if the intention is not to hide fraud? So this is a question I put to Sam Bankman-Fried, and his answer was, "Well, we have a lot of lawyers." Well, and I said, "Well, it's your chief regulatory officer." He's like, "Well, it wasn't. We did regulate a lot," and it was just this big dance of basically he's done great work. He's a great guy, and I think that tells you everything you need to know.
And there's figures like that probably even at the lower levels, like just
I'm just
infiltrate the entire organization.
Well, it's just like, why yeah, why wasn't there a CFA? Why wasn't there anyone in that space who could seemingly be the eyes that goes, "Holy whatever, we're in dangerous territory here," right? So yeah, it seems very deliberate. I mean, I talked to one FTX employee that they talked about who's told me they talked about taking I think it was taking FTX US public, and Sam was very against the idea. And the employee, in retrospect, speculated that it might have been because you'd face so much scrutiny, like regulation wise, like you'd have to, go through a lot, like more thorough audits, all that kind of stuff. That basically he knew they would never pass. Um, so yeah, I mean, it's red flags all the way down with that guy.
And you hope all of them get punished.
Everyone who knew. I mean, I think for sure there are people at FTX who didn't know. I think there are some people at Alameda who didn't know.
But there's degrees, sorry to interrupt, but there's degrees of not knowing.
Yes,
There's a looking away.
yes,
When you kind of know
yes.
shady stuff, that's still the same as knowing, right? That might be even worse.
Well, yeah, like, I was talking to one insider, and we were talking about the insider trading. They were telling me about this insider trading, and I said, "Do you think this was criminal?" And they said, "It was probably criminal in hindsight, yes." And the question is, someone who answers a question like that, what does that, like, mean? Like, it was probably criminal. So you're right. There are different degrees. I mean, I'll say at the most basic, I would be very happy if everyone who had direct knowledge went to jail, which I don't think will happen, to be clear. I think a lot of people are going to cut deals. Prosecutors are going to cut deals so they actually nail Sam Bankman Fried. I think that's their only focus.
What about his reputation? What do you think about all these interviews? Do you think they are helping him? Do you think they're good for the world? Do you think they're bad for the world? Like, what's your sense? And like, say you get a sit down interview with him for 3 hours, and I'm holding the door closed. What kind of is that a useful conversation or not? Or at this point, it should be legal, and that's it.
I think it's useful. I mean, I think it's all about how you interview him. You can interview someone responsibly. You can interview him irresponsibly. I think we've seen examples of both.
What's an irresponsible? I keep interrupting you rudely.
That's
This is
okay. No, no,
this
no.
is unacceptable.
No, 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 I think it's fine. There was like a New York Times interview which spends an amount of time any amount of time talking about his sleep. And he's like, "Yeah, I'm sleeping great." I mean, I think that's so deeply disrespectful to the victims, and especially when you're not even releasing an interview live. It's like you have time to triage what you're gonna talk about. Why would you spend any amount of time talking about the sleep that a fraudster is get it's just so weird. And
Well, it's can I steel man in that case?
sure.
I don't
Yeah,
think it turned out
I think
well.
that's
I think okay. Here's the thing. I could see myself talking about somebody's sleep or getting in somebody's mind if I knew I have unlimited time with them. If I knew I had like a 4 hours, because you get into the mind of
yes.
the person, how they think, how they see the world. Because I think that ultimately reveals if they're actually really good at lying, it reveals the depths, the complexity of the mind that through like osmosis you get to understand like this person is not as trivial as you realize. Also, it makes you maybe realize that this person is has a lot of hope, has a lot of positive ambition that's like that has developed over their life, and then certain interesting ways things went wrong. They
Yes.
become corrupt and all that kind of stuff.
That's all fine. But this conversation was not properly contextualized
Yes.
in the world of what he did. It and I've asked about this interview because I was like so curious. It was out of the New York Times. And there was not much mention of fraud or jail or the big crimes like misappropriation of even client assets. It was just sort of this, Sam sat down with me. He's under investigation, but there's not much specifics. And then it's like, yeah, he's playing storybook brawl. He's sleeping. And it's just like, okay, this
Oh,
isn't
yeah, yeah.
adding to
Oh,
the
no, 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 no.
conversation.
Especially when the New York Times, it's like you should be grilling, yeah.
Right, right, exactly. So, but as I said, I mean, it's all ranged the gamut. And some interviews, like some of it's okay, and then some of it's weird. Like the Andrew Sorkin interview, he asked some hard hitting questions, which I really appreciated. And then at the end, he goes, "Ladies and gentlemen, Sam Bankman-Fried," and everyone gives like like an ovation for Sam. I mean, the steel man of that, of course, is like they're actually applauding Andrew Sorkin, but the way you like lay it up, I wouldn't go like, "Ladies and gentlemen," it's like an applause line. It's like, "Ladies and gentlemen, the Eagles, Elton John,
Yeah,
Lex Friedman."
yeah.
And so to go to so you have this like deal book summit where you have all these important figures that are positively important. And at the end, you have Sam Bankman Fried, a fraudster, and you go, "Ladies and gentlemen, Sam Bankman Fried," everyone's applauding. That I think is a net, like, I think that's a negative. I think the way that the optics of that just were all wrong.
Yeah.
And so I think, yeah, you have to be very responsible. I think it's useful going back to how you can usefully do this. You can, even when somebody's determined to lie to you, it's always important to pin them down to an accounting of events because that is unimaginably helpful when it comes to a prosecutor trying to prove this guy's guilty. Is if you say you didn't do a crime, but you don't tell me any details about it, day of the trial, you can basically make up any story, right? But if you tell me in detail where you were that day, I can go hunt down. You say you were with Joe. I go hunt down Joe, and he says he wasn't with you. Boom, you've lost credibility, and now you're much more likely to be convicted. So it's really important to get SBF's exact accounting of how things went wrong, because right now he's positioning himself to throw his Alameda CEO Caroline Ellison under the bus. Like she did everything, she knew everything. I knew nothing. Well, is Caroline Ellison's going to take the stand and go, well, I have all these text messages and this is all a lie. And then Sam Bankman Fried is going to be completely, you know, ruined, like self ruined by his own design. So I think it's
So
important
more
for
like
them to
a
do.
legal type of, like, get the details of where he was, what he was thinking, what the
I think it's like, yeah, I think the public probably cares to get to know what happened too. And again, I think if you're careful, you can expose someone for as they lie to you without giving into those lies, right? Like without
Yes.
capitulating to, "Oh, I'm just gonna assume you're correct." I think you can point to, "Well, Lex, you say it happened this way, but you've lied about X, Y, and Z. Why should we believe you?" That's suddenly a totally different conversation than just being like, "Oh, okay, that's how it happened."
The thing I caught that bothered me, and the thing I hope to do in interviews um, if I eventually get good at this thing, is the human aspect of it, which is like which I think you have to do in person, is he seems a bit nonchalant about the pain and the suffering of people. I have red flags about in the way he's he communicates about the loss of money, like the pain that people are feeling about the money. I get red flags. Like you're not forget if you're involved in that pain or not. You're not feeling that pain.
Well,
Like
he'll say he is, but he'll be playing a game of League of Legends while doing it.
no, but I just see it
Yeah.
from his face, the
No,
dynamic.
I know.
And that's
I
what
know.
needs to be grilled.
Yeah.
Like that little human dance there. That's I mean I considered I talked to him. I considered doing an in-person interview with him. Um and in that
Are you still considering it?
I don't know. Do you think I should in person?
I think it depends if you think you have anything to add to the conversation. A lot of people have
Yeah, there's been
interviewed
already
him.
you did an incredible job.
Thanks. I think
I think I would like to grill the shit out of him as a fellow human, but
yeah.
not investigative
No,
like
no, I
CoffeeZilla
know.
investigative,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
like like another human being who I can have compassion for, who has caused a lot of suffering in the world. Like that grilling. Like basically convey the anger that people and the pain that people are feeling, right? Like that.
Yeah. I think I think it'd be really hard. I mean, like that guy is sort of a master dancer, and what he would say at the end of it, because I've listened to so many interviews of him, I probably am like a GPT model for Sam. I think he would do some kind of thing about like, yeah, I really hear you, and you know, it's just terrible. I feel such an obligation to the people who've lost money, and you know, it's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. You know, he'd do something like that. and it would be very superficially like, okay, but when you drill down to the details of what he did, it's just impossible that he didn't know. And one of the things that I wish I had asked, maybe I can talk about, like, I wish I had gone on this. It's just so hard when you're doing a live interview to kind of focus on one thing. Everyone's asked about the terms of service. So in the terms of service, there was like, we can't touch your funds. Your funds are safe. We're never going to do anything with that. Anytime anyone brings that up, he says, oh, well, there's this other terms of service over here with margin trading accounts. Remember, we talked about it, it's a derivatives platform. If you're in our derivatives side, you're subject to different terms of service, which kind of lets us like move your money around with everyone else. Okay. So we treat it as one big pool of funds. And that's sort of the explanation of how this all happened is we had this huge leverage position and we lost everything. But what no one has sort of done a good enough job getting to the heart of is that this pool of funds never was segregated properly. It was all treated under the same umbrella of we can use your funds. There was no amount of we have the client deposits, which were just deposited with us and not like used to margin trade or do anything over here. These funds over here, we have saved. They didn't. Fundamentally, they lied from the get go about how they were treating the most precious assets, which is your customer deposits that you said you didn't invest. Clearly, you put them all over here, you YOLO gambled them. And then when everyone starts withdrawing from here, they don't have any money over here. So that is like one of the most fundamental things that I haven't seen anyone grill him on. And the next time, if I get the chance to ambush him again, that's what I'm gonna drill down on because it's impossible for that not to be fraud. There's no world where you had a pool of funds over here and now you don't have them without you somehow borrowing over here. Because if you deposited 1 Bitcoin and I never sold that Bitcoin and it's earmarked Lex Friedman and you come and it's not there, something had to happen, right?
Well, so this is so interesting. So for me, the approach that, like you said, the most important question of because for you it's like were those funds segregated? For me, the question is, as a human being,
Yeah.
how would you feel if you were observing that? So, like, that like marshmallow test with the babies, like it's the human thing. It's a human nature question. Like, I can understand there's a pile of money, and uh, the good faith interpretation is like, well, I know what to do with that pile of money to grow that pile of money. Let me just take a little bit of it. Like, how willing are you to do that kind of thing? How able are you to do that kind of thing? And when shit goes wrong, what goes through your mind? How does it become corrupted? How do you begin to delude yourself? How do you delegate responsibility for the
Right.
failures? Like, as opposed to getting facts, try to sneak into the human mind of a person when they're thinking
Yeah.
that. Because the facts, they're gonna start waffling. They're gonna start like trying to make sure they don't say anything that gets them incriminated.
Right.
But I want to understand the human being there because I think that indirectly gives you a sense
I
of where were you in this big picture.
I think I've talked to so many people who have sort of committed some range of like outright fraud to like misleading marketing. No one thinks they're a bad person. Nobody
Mhm.
admits that they did it and they knew or almost nobody does. There's actually one funny exception, but I
Yeah.
had a guy who admitted like, yeah, I did it. It was wrong. And, but I did it and I wanted the money, which was kind of like almost refreshing in its honesty. But, the reason I focus on like the facts is because unless you find a bright red line, humans can rationalize anything.
Mhm.
I can rationalize any level of like, well, I did this because I had the best of intentions. And if you play the intention game, you'll never convict anyone because everyone has good intentions. Everyone's honest. Everyone's doing the best they can and got misleaded and got misguided and da 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 da. Ultimately, you have to drill down to the concrete and go, look, I get it. You're just like the last 50 guys that I interviewed. You had the best of intentions. It all went wrong. I'm very sorry for you. But at the end of the day, there's people hurting and there's people that have significant damage to their life because of you. What did you actually do? And what can we prove, taking intention out of it, taking motivation out? What can we prove that you did that was unethical, illegal, or immoral? And
Mhm.
like that is sort of what usually I try to go to because I will do those human interviews, but it's just it's like the same record on repeat. I mean, a lot of people
I
go through the
gotta
same.
I'm with you. I'm with you on the everything you said, but there is ways to avoid the record on repeat. I mean, those are different skill set. You're exceptionally good at the investigating. I do believe there's a way to break through the repeat. There's the different techniques to it.
Yes.
One of which is like taking outside of their particular story. Yes, when everyone looks at their own story,
Mhm.
they can see themselves as a good player doing good.
Right.
But you can do other thought experiments. I mean, there's
But they'll follow you to they'll know what the thought experiment is
no,
implying.
well, it depends. It depends, my friend. I mean, the like to me, there's a million of them, but of just exploring your ethics. Would you kill somebody to protect your family? And you explore that. You start to sneak into like, what's your sense of the in group versus the out group? How much damage you can do to the out group and who is the out group. And you start to build that sense of the person. Are we like the two mobsters that we're dressed as? Do we protect the family and fuck everyone else? You're with us, and the ones who are against us, fuck them. Or do we have a sense that human beings are all have value, equal value, and we want to that we're a joint humanity? There's ways to get to that, and you start to build up this sense of like some people that make a lot of money are better than others. They deserve to be at the top. If you have that feeling, you start to get a sense of like, yeah, the poor people are the dumbasses. They're the idiots. If you believe that, then you start to understand that this person may have been at the core of this whole corrupt organization.
Yes, 2 things. 1, I think you should join me on this side of the table. We'll
Yeah,
put SBF over here.
yeah.
We'll good guy, bad guy,
This is
human,
good.
facts, like
You're
the
the
int
bad guy. I'm like, no, no, no. Slow down, coffee.
what
Now
is
let's
your
just be
feeling
smoking.
about humanity? Yeah,
Have you been getting enough sleep?
yeah, right.
I mean,
So I think no, I think there's a lot of truth to what you said. One thing I've noticed that is hard to combat is sort of like preference falsification and just the outright lying about those things is tough to kind of pin down. But yeah, you're absolutely right. There's ways to interview people. There's all sorts of interesting techniques. And yeah, I don't disagree.
good cop, bad cop. We should do this. Should be like a sitcom. Okay, you did an incredible documentary on SafeMoon. The title is "I Uncovered a $1 billion Fraud." Can you tell me the story of SafeMoon?
Sure.
Abilities in their knowledge, right? So what's actually happened though in the last few weeks, like Bitcoin has been down or flat for a while, and some of these AI related data center developers are up 10x from the April lows. So I mean, I think it's more telling to just look at what's happened than it is to try to predict the future, right? Like I do think that it's more likely that Bitcoin is higher 2 or 3 months from now than lower. And the behavior of an iron or cipher probably will be more dependent on the unique catalyst those companies have in this environment than on the price of Bitcoin. But as I've said for a while now, over the last couple of years, if Bitcoin is doing well, it's probably also true that liquidity is good, that investors are excited and they're bidding all kinds of assets across the curve, not just these companies. So I'm watching the kind of broader, the broader kind of macro setup here, and I suspect that all of these things will be higher over the next 2 to 3 months. And just again, like that's how I'm positioned, and it's not investment.
Sure. So SafeMoon was a crypto coin that exploded on the scene in 2021, I think at this point. Sorry, I'm losing track of my years. 1 year in crypto is like 5 years in real life. But it kind of gained a huge amount of popularity because of this idea that it's in the name. You go safely to the moon. How they were going to do this is with sort of a sophisticated smart contract idea where there's, I kind of have to explain the way some contracts get rug pulled for a second, or there's scams happen. So in the sometimes it's called like the shitcoin space, the altcoin space, anything like below Bitcoin, Ethereum, and maybe the top 5 or 10 is kind of seen as this wasteland of gambling. And like, you don't know if the developers are going to become anything or not. You're kind of like reading the white paper, trying to figure it out. So there's this big question about like, how can you get scammed? How can, back to the interests, you don't want the developer to have some like parachute cord where they can pull all the money out. So one way this happens is that in decentralized finance, there's something called the liquidity pool. Okay? It's basically this big pot of money that allows people to trade between two different currencies. So let's say like SafeMoon and Bitcoin, right? Or Ethereum, or it's actually on the Binance Smart Chain. So it'd be BNB. And this pool of money can be controlled by the developers in such a way they can steal it all, right?
Mhm.
They can just grab it. I don't want to go too much into details because I feel like I'll lose people here. But the point of SafeMoon was the core idea was we're locking this money up. You can't touch it. And actually, every transaction that you buy SafeMoon with, we'll take a 5% tax of that. We'll do a 10% tax, but 5% of it will go back to all the holders of SafeMoon. Okay. And 5% of it will go back into this little pool of money. Okay. So the idea is as you trade, as this token becomes more viral, two things will happen. One, the people who are holding it long term will be rewarded for holding it long term by receiving this 5% tax that's distributed to everyone. And two, you can kind of trust that your money's going to have this stable value because this pool of money here in the middle that's kind of guaranteeing you can get your safe moon out into this actually valuable currency, it's not going to move. So the story of SafeMoon was that fundamentally, this was not the case. They promised that this money was going to be locked up. It was not actually locked up at all. They said it was automatically locked up. You don't have to worry about it. Well, it was very manually locked up, and they didn't actually lock a lot of it up. They took a lot of it for themselves, for the developers. So there's a lot of players in this. A lot of them have left by now. There's kind of this main CEO that everyone knows, John Caroni now, and despite saying that they were going to lock up all the funds for 4 years, somehow he's gone from, as everyone else in the token has lost 99% of the value of the token. So they've lost 99%. He's gotten like a $6 million crypto portfolio, multi-million dollar real estate portfolio, invested millions into various companies. So he's accrued this huge wealth. And so I made a video basically exposing that and showing how this coin, which once had a $4 billion market cap, is just viral everywhere. Everyone was talking about it because of these viral ideas of like it is sort of a captivating idea that by holding it you could get returns, right?
Mhm.
Like you just hold on to it, you automatically get money. And it's a viral idea that this money in the middle in the pot isn't going to leave you. When those things turned out to be false, this community has had a slow death as a lot of people realized it was a scam. And there's been a core part of the community, which gets to an interesting dynamic we can talk about if you want to, where they have like doubled down on the belief in Coroni. And so part of it was out of a hope to let those people know what was really going on in their coin and like hopefully save some of them. Not in like some altruistic sense, but like, or not in like some like I'm like a hero sense, but in the sense of like I think a lot of them didn't know, like literally didn't know. So just sort of like as a public service, letting them know so they could get their money out and hopefully save themselves a lot of pain and suffering. So
So
yeah,
they really dug in. So
some
they're
did, some
okay.
did, some left. I mean, a lot of people have left, but the people who are left are people with large amounts of SafeMoon holdings that are down immensely. And you can imagine at a certain point in losses, there's a tremendous psychological pressure to go, look, I'm in it. I got to go for the long haul. And then you want to believe that this thing is legitimate and will succeed because A, there's an ego component around I haven't been scammed. I'm too smart to get scammed. It's tremendously it hurts psychologically to acknowledge you've been taken for a ride. And also you just want this thing to succeed for your financial well-being. So you like want to believe it. So there's tremendous psychological pressure to build cult-like communities around these tokens, and I've noticed with the incentive of like community built, it's sort of new to finance. There's like these meme coins or these cults. I don't want to, it's not really fair to call all of them cults. Like some of them are open to criticism, but one of the things that defines cults is they're not open to sunlight or criticism. There's these financial communities that are opening up with crypto, with a few stocks, where if you criticize them, you are attacked. And the entire community has every incentive to kind of like downplay your legitimate criticisms or kind of um, go after you. And so it creates this interesting dynamic that
So,
I'm fascinated by.
what do you think about Bitcoin then? Do you think it's one of those communities that does attack you when criticized? So, I guess, which coins do you think are open to criticism and which are not?
It's kind of tough. Like, no community is a monolith. So just like it's just a spectrum of how open they are. There's just like there's always this core contingent of extreme believers who will go after anyone who criticizes them, and it's just about how wide of a band that makes up of the entire token.
Sure. How active that small community is.
Correct.
So in Bitcoin, they're called Bitcoin maximalists,
Yes.
but you can also call any community's subgroup like that maximalist, whatever the belief is.
Correct.
I don't know. Dunkin' Donuts maximalists. That community is probably small in terms of attack you online. If you could, you know which community has a very intense following? So I got attacked on the internet when I said Messi's better than Ronaldo.
Oh yeah. That's
Uh,
controversial.
and so that's a very intense maximalist community there. The other one that surprised me is when I said, now I did it in jest. Okay, folks? I said Emacs is a better IDE than Vim.
I love Emacs. I agree.
Listen, I have trauma. I wake up sweating sometimes at night thinking they're
Emacs Master Race.
the Vim people are
Yeah.
after me. They're
Yeah.
everywhere. They're in the
Yeah.
shadows. No, Vim is an amazing, and it's actually surprised. I've recently learned that it's still even more so than before an incredibly active community. So a lot of people wrote
But
to
do you
me.
use Space Max? It's just Emacs and Vim?
No, I haven't. I use Raw. I have the
Old school
original,
Emacs?
so
Oh, you gotta use yeah, yeah, yeah,
but
you
hold on a
gotta
second.
sorry, go ahead.
I have recently said, you know what? Let's make love, not war,
I
and I
s
went to VS
yes.
Code. I went to a more modern IDE. I
Sure,
put because I did most of my programming in Emacs. I did most of anything as one does in Emacs, just because I also love Lisp, so I can customize everything. But then
sure.
I realized like how long will Vim and Emacs be around really? Well, I was thinking as a programmer looking like 10, 20 years out, I should challenge myself to learn new IDs, to learn the new tools that the majority of the community is using so that I can understand what are the benefits and the costs. I found myself getting a little too comfortable with the tools that I grew up with. And
Sure.
I think one of the fundamental ways of being as a programmer, as anyone involved with technology, d- based on how quickly it's evolving, is to keep learning new tools. Like the way of life should be constantly learning. You're not a mathematician or a physicist or any of those disciplines that are more stable. This
Yeah,
is like everything is changing. Crypto's, like you said, a perfect example of that. You have to constantly update your understanding of of digital finance constantly in order to be able to function, in order to be able to criticize it, in order to be able to know what to invest in. So yeah, that was why I did. I tried PyCharm a bunch, the whole JetBrains infrastructure, and then also VS Code because that's really popular, and Atom and Sublime, all of those. I've been exploring. I've been exploring,
you
but
should
VS Code is amazing.
you should check out Space Max. I'm just gonna give one more pitch for it. It's just basically like a
Drag me back in.
customizable configuration. Well, Emacs is already customizable, but it's, uh it's pretty useful. I'm not even much of a coder, but for, like, certain journaling applications or, like, time management, like, I find it really useful, so but anyway, wait, we're so, like, in I feel like half this podcast
Tree.
is what it should have been, and the
Yeah,
half of it's just us nerding out
yeah.
about our own
Random things.
engineering, like, idiosyncrasies.
Uh,
Sorry, guys.
all right. So what were we talking about? Safe Moon and Bitcoin. Bitcoin. What do you think? Is there? Have you made enemies in certain communities? What do you think about Bitcoin?
So I've made certain enemies in the sort of crypto skeptics space because there's sort of this range of skepticism you can have about cryptocurrency. I'm obviously a skeptic of a lot of it. But there are certain aspects of crypto that I think are inevitable, and I'm going to do my best to kind of describe those here. But I'm not committed to any crypto specifically, but there are some I've taken a lot of heat ironically for not being skeptical enough. There's some people who believe that like the entire thing is a complete waste of time. There r slash buttcoin on Reddit. It's an amazing community actually. It's very funny. They have
What's a buck? Is like is
it's
that
like a
is
play on Bitcoin.
oh
They're just like, at
oh
least we admit it's a scam. Very funny guys, very funny people there. So, but they'll be like, CoffeeZilla should just admit that all of it's a giant Ponzi scheme. All of it's a basically like not real.
so everything including Bitcoin,
Include yeah, it's
the
all
whole
basically all the Ponzi-nomics. It's Ponzi-nomics all the way down. It's like there is no fundamental use case that uh, is that useful. I don't know if I guess I don't want to straw man them here. I don't want to say that. I don't know if they're saying that it's all useless. At minimum, they're saying the level of interest in cryptocurrencies is far, the actual usefulness of it is far less than the amount of attention and time and money that's being poured into it. So, like the revolutionariness of this technology is not at all revolutionary. Let me kind of steel man what I think the pro crypto take is. I think that technologies are sort of this inert thing. And the success of them, in my opinion, is not based on PR. It's not based on marketing. It's based on cheaper, faster, better. Fundamentally, the success of any technology relies on those three things and longevity of it. So I have two employees, and both of them are out of the country. So I have to frequently make international wire payments to them. Um,
is one of them SBF? Just as a reporter, I have to ask.
no,
Okay, all right.
um,
He's not on the payroll. Good.
yeah, I think
I'm
he'd have to pay me.
I'm trying to do my best CoffeeZilla where it's like in hard hitting
Yeah, yeah, it's good,
investigative
it's good, it's
questions.
good. So, with these international payments, you face all sorts of slow fees, and you face, like, kind of like this time thing,
Yeah.
and it's this painful process. So, if I use different cryptocurrencies, some of them are, like, really fast, some of them have really low fees. I just believe in a world where digital currencies with fast payments, with cheap payments, revolutionize the global exchange of currency. And I don't know if this is going to include the blockchain. It's just that the blockchain is the first thing that's really embraced truly digital currency, which doesn't need to go through this complicated system of wire transfers and just happens. So I can send you, let's say I want to send you Ethereum or Bitcoin, I can send it to you just as fast if I send you $1 or $1 billion, and I can send it to you just as fast if you're across from me or if you're across the world from me. That I think is a step change and easier, faster, better in terms of like just this really basic international payments kind of idea. So I think at like its core, if the lowest form use case of cryptocurrencies is that, I think it will um change the world in some variety. It's just kind of the larger question is that technology going to include the blockchain specifically or not? The other benefit is transparency, which I personally like as an investigator. It's just that previously it's like hard to describe how opaque our financial system is until you've tried to investigate someone or something. Understanding finances, unless you have a subpoena, unless you're like the FBI or like the SEC and you can get a subpoena for someone's finances, or you're going through discovery, you don't know what someone has. You're basically playing poker with everyone, and the cards are face down. For the first time, the blockchain, to some extent, because there are ways to obfuscate it, and in some ways, cryptocurrency has enabled more fraud, which is kind of this irony. But in some ways, it's enabled people to also audit a lot better and in real time. And I think that is a structural change that is fundamentally for the better. The question of all this is, do those betters outweigh the cons that this introduces? And how much can regulation mitigate those cons? Some of those cons being like fraud, money laundering, all these negative externalities that are easier with cryptocurrency
Why do you think cryptocurrency in particular seems to attract fraudulent people, like scammers and
because
fraudsters and
it's unregulated. It's the Wild West, and you can transmit large amounts of money very quickly across.
projects like new coins?
because you have to show very little actual use case. You can just promise. So it's like true of any emerging technology. So much vaporware happens at the beginning when it's all promise. Because fundamentally, let's say you're legitimate, I'm illegitimate. We look the same at the start of a technology
Mhm.
because both of us are promising what this can do. And in fact, the less scruples and morals I have, in some ways, I can outcompete you because I can say mine does what Lexus does, but like way better and way faster, and it's going to happen in a year rather than 10
Mhm.
years. You're being honest. I'm playing a dishonest game. I look better. Once this space matures and you actually have some people actually doing the things that they say they're going to do, suddenly this equation changes. Now you're Amazon, you're delivering in 2 days. I can say whatever I want. You do the thing you do, and I have no credibility. So I think the like part of part of the fraud is, just the ability to transmit so much money so quickly with such little oversight. Part of it is like just happens with any emergent technology. Vaporware is a real thing. And hopefully, as this space matures, as regulation comes in, things will improve.
Let me ask you your own psychology.
Sure.
You're going after some of the richest, some of the most powerful people in the world. Do you worry about your own financial, legal, and psychological well-being?
Uh yes. Yeah,
Uh,
I do. I mean, I'm not totally oblivious to the precariousness of like any kind of journalism like this. Obviously, there's risks. I've always believed there's a quote, and I'm going to butcher it, but I hope you guys understand the spirit of it. Um, news is when you print something someone else doesn't want you to print. Everything else is public relations. I really believe to do meaningful journalism, you have to go after people. Like it's not inherently a safe profession. I mean, if you're going to do important work, you have to have risk tolerances. And I think everyone has a line of what that risk tolerance is, and it's different for everyone. I don't think I could do what Edward Snowden did. I think that would be my bright red line is going against my own government. It's such a in my opinion, I really see him as a hero. Like it's such a selfless act of self-destruction. You know that the party you're going after has all the power and will crush you. And you do it anyway out of the true, I don't know, platonic ideal of journalism. I think that's beautiful. I don't think I could do that. I think I need some ability to live and subsist in the society that I am in. And I think my bright red line would be like if I'm forced to flee the country for my work, I think I'd finally have to say no. But for as journalists go, I take risk pretty well. I especially think risk is important to take when you're young and when you can do that. I think I mean, I'm married. So when I have a family, I think I will probably dial this risk thing down. Just being honest. I mean, I think you kind of have to. Um, but right now, I'm kind of like running on all cylinders. I'm willing to take on quite a range of people. But
well, you're
yeah, I think a
also
lot about it.
a wolf pack of one or small
Yeah.
wolf pack, as opposed to having like a New York Times behind you or a huge organizations with lawyers, with a team, with a history, with
These people are less courageous. This is the dirty truth. The bigger the organization, the